just want to talk to you about a good father. A good father always backs you up. And that's what we have in God. I experienced that as I was traveling back from Texas. As I was traveling back from Texas, I got off the plane and I said, God, if you're really that good, you will back me up. And I approached this man and this woman. This man was pushing a wheelchair. This lady was about to go in for foot surgery. I asked her, I said, can we pray? And I knew my father was standing behind me. And as I prayed, the lady said, I feel heat and I feel tingling in my foot. She didn't even get up out of the chair at that moment. But as the attendant had dropped her off at the food court and he came back, he was exploding with joy. He said, she has no pain. And we just hugged each other, we embraced. And at that moment, I knew the Father's love was moving so powerfully. And at that moment, I knew that I would forever be changed. And so I want you to know right now that the Father's love casts out all fear. Because I felt fear in that moment when I got off that plane. I said, God, I don't know if you always back me up, but I'm willing to take a risk. So just realize that even if you didn't have the perfect Father, that He wants to prove Himself to you as the one who will draw near to you. And the times that you can't and you don't feel like it's possible, He really and absolutely wants to be that for you. Just remember that perfect love has cast out all fear, and you've been perfected in the Father's love.
So, you've been hearing a lot of great stories about people having things in their bodies happen. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. When I was 18, I was fed up with my family. I was done. I was angry and totally bitter and bent up and just really in a bad place emotionally. And I decided I was going to run away from home. And so living in North America, I decided I wanted to run as far away as I could. So I went to a school in Australia for 6 months. And unbeknownst to me, I was actually running into my own trap. God was totally there for me and just rocked up. He came in the form of a gentleman who was a father, and as soon as this man walked in the room, the entire atmosphere changed. There was such a peace and a presence and a love that filled that room. And he pulled me out of the crowd and started praying for me, and I hadn't laughed in years, and I could feel my body physically get rid of this weight that had been on it just from the toll of my emotions and my anger and unforgiveness and all of this stuff. And he prayed for me and it all lifted, and I laughed for the first time in 3 years. And the other 50 people in the room started laughing with me, and tears were running down our eyes and it was down our faces, and it was really good. So I just want to let you know that testimonies happen emotionally too. You can pray for somebody and see the countenance of their face change, see a heart come back into healing, see families restored, relationships restored. I went back to my parents' house and I lived with them, and they had to readjust to me because I had changed so much. I did a 180 turn. I left this angry, broken, bitter person and returned this person who's full of joy and laughing. And now 3 years later, there's almost no day that goes by when there isn't a smile or a laugh close to happening and bubbling over. So I just want to release that too, that there's the possibility for not only physical things to happen, but emotional things and spiritual things to happen too.
Hey guys, so I just want to tell you a story about an experience I had with some homeless guys. I was with my friends and we were in a coffee shop and we were just enjoying God's presence. And we walked outside and we looked across the street and we saw these 3 homeless guys with their dog, and we're like, hey, let's go talk to them and let's go pet their dog. So we went over there, just asked them about their dog, asked them about their tattoos, and we just began to just speak encouraging words into them and just kind of what we saw that God said about them and what He liked about them. And all of a sudden, I just start feeling God's presence. And I asked them, like, do you guys feel that? And they're like, yeah. They're like, this is an amazing feeling. They're like, I feel freer than I've ever felt before. What is that? And I was like, well, that's God. And sometimes you can actually feel His tangible presence. They're like, whoa, man, it's so trippy. And I was like, yeah, like He comes with His freedom, with His joy, and they loved it. And so then we began to ask them if they had any pain in their body. And one of the guys I was sitting next to said his ankles hurt really bad. And I was like, oh, well, can we just pray for your ankles and just ask that God would heal them? And he's like, yeah. And so I didn't even touch him. And I just spoke to his ankles. I was like, ankles, be healed. And he's like, whoa, they feel so much better. And I was like, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how did they feel? And he's like, they're out of 5. I'm like, okay. So I asked his friend to touch his ankles and just release God's presence on his ankles. And so he did. And he's like, no way. My ankles, they don't hurt at all anymore. He's like, they've hurt for a really long time. And since I'm sleeping on the streets, like, it bothers me all the time. And I was like, now you have the authority to go give that power away to people. And so I just wanted to make note of some things, is that we invited God's presence when we were there. And it was really God just like loving them, and just as we just invited him, and he just did what he did best, and he healed him, and he loved him, and he took good care of him. And there's just something so powerful about valuing his presence, and just valuing him in the room, and valuing him and taking him wherever you go, and just like letting his love just flow through you and be released on people. And when you value his presence, that's when there's a shift. That's when it goes from, I'm going to pray, and I'm going to pray for their healing, but maybe it doesn't work, but then you're valuing the actual presence of who he is there. And that's when there's a shift, and that's when you actually see things happen and see people get healed.